There was a point in time where professional development was a way to accelerate your career success. And I don't believe that to be the case anymore. Pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, that's a baseline requirement today. I don't know how you don't fall behind if you're not doing that. The talk about upskilling and professional development and growth, I think all of that is true. But I think it's accelerated to the point where this is baseline requirement today. If anybody that is listening to us talk over time, if they think about their own career paths, there's that Jack Welch quote that I love. If the rate of change in the outside exceeds the rate of change in the inside, the end is near. And I feel like that is where people need to be thinking about their career trajectories and how they're going to remain successful. It's a new world as far as I'm concerned.
Welcome to this week's Treasury Career Corner podcast, where I interview Treasury professionals about their Treasury careers. Each and every week, I'll talk to treasurers about how they build their careers, where they are now, where they see both themselves and the Treasury profession going to next. Let's get on with the show. In this week's show, I'm joined by Pat Culkin, the current Executive Vice President of the Association for Finance Professionals, and soon to be President and CEO, replacing the lovely Jim Cates. Pat will take over from Jim, who retires as the President and CEO on June 30th after more than 25 years of amazing service. Jim was on the podcast previously a couple of times, great guy and everything else, but Pat is taking over. So big shoes to fill there, Pat, no pressure or anything. But as Executive Vice President, Pat leads AFP's global strategy and partner development for international markets at the moment. With over 20 years experience at AFP, he oversees the membership, data analytics, technology, business development, marketing, events, HR. Only got a couple of things to do there as well. But obviously, we had a chat earlier on in the year, and I've got to say a big thank you to Pat. As we begin the show, it was Pat's suggestion that maybe the podcast counts for AFP credits, CTP credits, which it does. So thank you for that, sir. It's been a journey we've got there, but I want to explore your career journey, if you would, or re-explore it. Take us back. How did you first start how did you encounter finance, then treasury, AFP? Over to you.
Sure. Well, first off, I want to thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited for our conversation today. My journey with AFP is a bit of an interesting one. Way back when, earlier in my career, I actually started off in more of a recruiting role, and I was working for an external recruiting firm. And at the time, that was right around the time frame where Jim Cates came on board to AFP. So at the time, there was a shift in strategy for the organization. There was a bit of turnover. They had some new positions that they were adding. Long story short, AFP became a client of mine. So I was placing people at AFP before I was a staff member at AFP. And over time, what I realized is that you start to identify the profile. You and your business, I'm sure you understand this. You understand the profile of person that really fits within an organization, the organizational culture well. And the more I got into it, the more I realized that AFP sounded like the type of place that I wanted to be. That really is what drew me into the organization. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up working for the organization. I came in an HR function. My primary responsibilities were, again, on that recruiting side. But what happened over the years was it turned into, I started to realize, I always have had this curiosity. I'm the type of person that I tend to get bored easily. I like to keep learning new things. I've always had this push for what else can I do? So you come in, you learn a function, you tend to excel in a function, and then you want to figure out what's next. Like, what else can I do? And AFP has been, it was an outstanding place for me to help get those opportunities. I started to dive into different parts of the organization. Every time I raised my hand and asked if I could maybe help or be part of something or be a contributor somewhere along the way, that I always had the green light there. And what it did was it sparked a passion of mine that I probably didn't know that I had when I started with the organization. I have this passion towards, I realized what was rewarding to me. What I get the most satisfaction out of is being able to have a positive impact in some way on others. Like, I find it incredibly rewarding if something that I had done or been part of had an impact on someone. You can look across and say, I played, even if it was the tiniest little fraction of a percentage of the impact on someone's success, it was a charge for me.
Yeah.
And when you start thinking about organizations like AFP, professional societies, that's what we do. Like, that's our mission as an organization. And it just clicked. And to this day, I still get that charge.
And when you first started, Pat, we zoomed through AFP. You and I understand it. We've got UK associations, we've got international associations.
Yep.
When you started at the organization, Association of Financial Professionals, what was it then? And what is it now? Maybe just give us a snapshot of that, just for maybe some of the UK listeners, or we hear of it, we know of it. Oh, that's their association, but you're wider than that. And I know that you also now do FP&A as well. So it's a wider remit. So can you explain that for the listeners?
So over the span of my time with AFP?
Well, or the snapshot of what it was then and then what it is now, sort of thing, and how it's changed.
So I'll tell you this, when my first offer letter from AFP, it was on Treasury Management Association letterhead. Right. It was back when we were TMA. AFP's official first day as AFP was my first day of employment at AFP. Way back when, in the beginning, like from when I started to where we are now, I mean, it was a treasury-focused organization. Over the period of the 20 some odd years that I've been with the organization, we've started to really focus much more on really our mission. I mean, our mission as an organization is to serve the finance professional, and that's broader than treasury. So we started to drive further into the FP&A space. We developed the FPAC certification that we offer. Then it started to become a little bit more, we started to really focus on how global of an organization we could be and how we could serve our mission more effectively in areas outside of the United States, outside of that North American market. And that's turned us into, over the course of time, we're an international organization. We have presence in the Asia Pacific region, presence in the MEA region. We have global partners across the world such as yourself, Mike, that we work with, that gives us the ability to be able to kind of broaden the broader ecosystem of community, of information, of content, of services that we can provide to help people, again, go back to that mission, to serve their success, to help them to be successful in how they grow as individuals and as professionals within treasury and finance. So it's been a wild ride to see what AFP was to where we are today, which only makes me more excited about where we're going to be.
And going again, seeing that evolution, how have you seen the priorities and challenges evolve? Might touch on COVID, but the fact is that aside, more their challenges of treasury professionals and finance professionals more generally, how has it changed, would you say? Or how, from your perspective, the great thing is you've seen it, I've seen it 25 years similarly. And the treasurers I was recruiting 25 years ago, we were just talking before the show, and the treasurers I recruit now, there's a lot of different challenges, but also they are different people. What about from your side?
When I think about kind of what treasury looked like, and it's all through my lens, but what treasury looked like back in the day versus kind of where it is now and where it's going, treasury's been, we see this heavy drift, and I know we chatted a little bit about this before the show, towards like how technology and AI, which is the buzzword, we keep talking about it over and over again, but it's relevance to that and how it's accelerated what treasury can be doing, how treasury can create efficiencies and effectiveness in the processes that they have to be able to work through in order to be more strategic and really be that business partner. We see treasury right now being much more of a, how do I say this effectively? At one point in time, my perspective with that was that treasury was a little bit more of a siloed part of the finance organization.
Yeah.
And I think that what we've seen over the last 20, 25 years is that treasury has become a much more integrated part of the overall finance organization, as well as a more integrated part of the broader business. Organizations need strategic treasury is critical to the success of an organization, like especially in times of crisis. When you're coming into periods of time where there may be some economic headwinds that we're facing, understanding even the basics of effective cash management is critical to an organization and organization's success. I think that what we've seen is this realization from businesses and business leaders around the world that treasury is a critical part of their organizational performance and can be a massive contributor to the organizational strategy moving forward. which I'm not sure was necessarily as accepted or as prevalent as it was as 20 years ago versus where we are today.
And I agree. And one of the things I've said, I think it was also related to salary. A lot
Sure.
of treasurers, if you like, they didn't mind treasury becoming this specialist area and look at us. But by doing that, they allowed themselves to be put into a corner office. And yeah, well, the treasurer will look after your cash. Give it to them. They'll look after the cash. And then they're like, hang on. No, I don't just want to look after the cash. I can be part of the business. And I've seen treasury battle its way back out. And now it's certainly in the past 5 to 10 years, 5 years in particular, it's really part of the business. And I've talked on a few podcasts recently and are saying, yeah, it's a real part of the business and the difference you can make. And it's back to where it was, where it should be, if you like.
So I suspect that you hear about this. You probably see these trends also when you talk to clients about what they're requiring of treasury, like the people that they're recruiting, what are the requirements or what do they prefer to see in those roles? And I suspect it's a very different role definition than what it was when you kind of working through a job spec with a client, like what the definition of that role is very different today than what it was even 10 years ago, I suspect.
It's not just that. It's again, we were talking, I recently spoke in Texas just last week. And I said, look, you guys have a wish list. And they're like, oh, no. I said, no, I'm telling you, it's a wish list. It's a like to have. I said, I would spend a lot of time working with you. What's your must have and like to have? Yes, we all want to have people that have loads of really good data and data skills. And I said, have you guys got them? And they're like, yeah, maybe not. So I said, no, I know you want to hire them, but do you know anyone that's training them? Do you know anyone that's training these skills? Yeah, these guys are coming up, but you can't have someone that's got, you see the jokey ads, don't you? Sometimes we want someone that's got 5 years AI experience. Well, they don't, because it wasn't around 5 years ago, or if they do, they're probably the ones that invented AI. Yeah, no, it's like, no, we're not having that.
I think that some of that is based on the fact that sometimes organizations don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what you don't know, you shoot for the moon. And I think that some of those wish lists, I actually think that a lot of those wish lists are very relevant to what we should be looking for and what we should be focusing on. And I think that really boils down to that education of, we'll talk specifically about treasury for a second, but that development of the treasury profession and the future of the treasury professionals. Like, how do we get those potential candidates for future treasury roles? How do we prepare them for what it is that's coming down the pike? Because for those of us that have been in the world in their career paths for 20, 30 years, we're still learning too. I mean, all this, like when you think about technology and data and AI and, what data is available and how you can mine that data for information to help develop your strategies and your forecasts. Until we can see and kind of touch and feel what that looks like and what it can do, it's somewhat hard to articulate. And I think that we're seeing some of that with organizations and what they're looking for. They don't quite know exactly how to define it.
You were saying just before that you want to invite people, and I'm very happy to do that. You want to invite people that have started to get a handle on this to sort of engage with you guys so you can find out the best use. Isn't that right?
I'd love to. Yeah, I think that when you think about technology AI in particular, it's a topic that we're all talking about, and we don't need to do a deep dive into AI. I think that it's very clear that it is going to be a prevalent part of our future, and that we need to figure out how to effectively utilize it in a way that can be strategically beneficial for the profession, which means that individuals are going to have to learn how they can apply it into their roles. For us, a lot of our members, a lot of our customers, they really look to others to learn about how they've done it in the past. Effective case studies, like organizations that are out there that have effectively applied artificial intelligence to drive effectiveness and efficiency, to be able to free up staff time, to be able to be more strategic and really be able to drive growth for their organizations. For those of you listeners out there that can talk about what they've done, I'd invite them to reach out to me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm all over the AFP website to be able to find my email address. I'd love to hear from you, because I think that the stories that we can garner from the broader community will help the rest of the community. And I think that helps kind of bridge that gap for the people that are out there. And I am one of them. I mean, we're all one of them at some point. We don't know what we don't know. Help us understand what that might be. Show us what you've done, and we can use that as a way to help educate the broader community.
That's a lot of what we do. I'm speaking at AFP in Boston later this year, and it's that collaboration. It's, as you say, I've seen them before where people put forward their sessions and it's a very narrow slice and things like that. It's got to be a value to the rest of the community. And that's where collaborative learning and everything else. And that links very nicely into Jim, I know, was very passionate about the why being the success of your members and them doing well. What's your why as you sort of take over? By the time this comes out, you'll probably be in the #1 seat by the time. What's your why as the incoming CEO?
My personal why?
But you can be both your personal why and your why for the organization, is that?
For the organization, so Jim and I have worked together very closely for many years. He's been the CEO of AFP my entire time at the organization. He's been my direct supervisor. I've reported to him for many years. My coach, he's my mentor. Jim and I align in a lot of ways. I think for organizationally, why AFP exists and why we like our beacon is really around helping people to be successful. Like if you ask me, why does AFP exist? Like Jim, I would say we exist for the success of the corporate finance professional worldwide. That's boilerplate why. And I think that it's just as powerful now as it was the first day we kind of came up with it as we were talking about it as an organization. From a personal standpoint, like that reward I get from having an impact, my personal why revolves around that. Like I want to have a positive impact on AFP and AFP's ability to be able to serve its organizational why for the broader market. Like if I can help the organization and help the organization to drive more success for the broader corporate finance treasury market, I would find that incredibly rewarding. And it's interesting. Some of those things you don't what you don't know. 20 years ago, I didn't know that was the thing that was going to be such a driver for me, and it continues to be.
And you guys, and we partnered with you on the certification, CTP, because we're pro-education. And that's why we've partnered with you guys. We're pro-education wherever it is. And that was a big discussion point that Jim and I talked about. But also you've got other things that are coming along, education, networking. We'll come on to personal brand and things a little bit more. But where do you see AFP and adding more value to its members, if you like, as we go forward? And it was funny, I was listening to a podcast just last night and the lady said, predicting in recruitment where you'd be in 5 years. And she said, I can't. She actually said it to someone. She went, I can't, but do you know where you're going to be in 5 years? I was like, yeah, it was a good point. It was like, she could barely know what it's going to look like in a year. And I thought, yeah. And I want to say the 3 to 5 years with yourself, but just generally, what's the direction of travel?
So I think for AFP, we've got our core business. We, between the certifications, our events, our membership, our training, I really think that the value that, especially kind of in the day and age of where we are, what we're all dealing with, like around the world, we're all dealing with very similar flavors of challenges, let's say, right? Things are moving quickly. How do you stay relevant? How do you make sure you're not falling behind? I think that a lot of the value that AFP, how we can provide that value, you can say it a little differently, how we can provide that value to that broader market, I actually think community is a really big part of it. I think that if you ever heard the expression, I'm sure you have, the expression, it takes a village, raising children, it takes a village. I actually think that applies very much to the profession. I think that the value that we can drive is largely based on how we can learn from each other. And if you think about an organization like AFP, a professional society, we have a set of expertise in-house, right? We've got a team of subject matter experts. We have people that come from the profession that have been corporate practitioners in the past. But we leverage members, we leverage volunteers, we leverage partners, we leverage organizations, people like you, Mike. Like we talk with you about, what are you seeing? How are you seeing these challenges evolve? Our ability to be able to take all that information in is leveraging the community to be able to then distribute some of that information back out in a manner that can be applicable across a broad swath of the market. Now, I think that for AFP, as we continue to build community, we think like things like our member meetups that we're doing. We do virtual meetups. So obviously there's the in-person events. It's a big part of it.
Yeah.
AFP Collaborate, which is a online platform in order to be able to communicate with other people within the broader AFP community. We're doing our member meetups, roundtable sessions. It gives individuals the ability to be able to learn not only directly from AFP and AFP's team, but also from others in the broader marketplace. I see that as being a huge value for us and a significant contributor to how we can drive towards that mission moving forward. It also helps us all to keep up. Kind of going back to that same theme, right? We're all continuously learning. I am, you are, your listeners are. We all have to be in order to keep up with the pace of the world.
Yeah. And this is and going back actually is an interesting one. We'll come back to the global nature of it. So when I first started in treasury recruitment, AFP was a very US centric organization. Now it's much more global. And people have asked me, actually, I was just asked a couple of days ago why I was a treasury recruiter. I said, look, I didn't know what treasury was. Met all these treasury guys. They often were the first to the bar, the last to leave it, very relationship focused. I really liked them. I was like, and I just thought, yeah, I found my people, love this. But joking aside, I also realized quite quickly that I was started doing it in the UK. And then I was like, oh, actually, I can do this across Europe. Oh, hang on. And then off I went to Singapore, taking my wife and kids, and it was great. And it took me around the world. And now it takes us across the US, and it's got that global nature. So as you've grown your presence as an organization, is that where you plan that to continue that momentum, or where do you see it serving its members, or what's the growth going from there?
Absolutely. There was a point in time way back when where we were a very US centric organization, and we had this belief that, an inaccurate belief to be clear, but we had this belief that really our product and service mix was really a product and service mix that would be much more geared towards the US market. And I'm thrilled that we were wrong. I'm thrilled about that, because what it's turned into is that we're seeing a significant percentage of our overall growth coming from outside of the United States, whether it be the Asia Pacific market, Middle African markets. We're seeing significant growth in the European markets. And I think that, and particularly with CTP, like this current window for our CTP exam, it's the highest registration number that we've ever had. And a lot of that is coming from outside the US. And it's not like a concentration of, we're seeing this huge growth in the MIA market, but little bits and pieces here and there elsewhere. It's coming from all over. And I think that when we kind of boil it back down to AFP and our mission, the way I look at things, when approached about another market, or should we be looking at another part of the world or a different geography, there's really only two questions. Like the first two questions I ask are, one, can we effectively is there a market to serve our mission there? And if the answer is yes, that quickly leads to the next question of, how can we do so effectively and of course, in some level of financially responsible manner over a longer period of time, but how do we do it effectively in that market? And it's been interesting because just keeping it simple, like I'm a fan of simplicity, like keeping that simple approach of, should we go here, or should we look into what we might be able to provide here? The question becomes, is there a market there that we can serve our mission? Because our mission is to be the global organization that helps drive the success of corporate treasury and finance. And then how do we do it? And those two questions looking at it that way, has really kind of opened up a much broader world for us. And I think it's been a part of how it's led to the organizational growth. I mean, AFP as an organization is we're not looking at the constraints of where the US borders are. We're looking at the constraints of where can we serve our mission. And that is a very it's an enlightening way to look at things.
And also, do you find then the requirements the same? I imagine they're different from your non-US based members, or how does it differ, sort of thing? I know certainly for me, when I've talked to people, they say, oh, what should I study? And in fact, a guy in the US the other day was saying, should I study CTP, CFA, FRM? I was like, well, what do you want later? What are the stepping stones? And I was just talking him through that. And I said, if you want to be in treasury in this period, do this. And we're giving him some advice. But that was the thing. If you want to be in treasury, do the treasury qualification, but more, not just the qualifications, but are there different requirements from those guys? Or what are the thoughts from those you've seen?
Like in terms of our certification? Like the CTP?
Not just the certification, but more the membership. What are you hearing from other members or other, because I know that you've done a lot of stuff in the
Yeah.
Middle East and Egypt and various other bits.
That's really an interesting question and we're still learning to some degree.
Yeah.
If we go into a different market, so let's use the Middle East as an example. Like as we started to work more effectively in the Middle Eastern region, we've got a partner that we work with, Beacon Financial Training. They've been instrumental in helping us to understand that market more effectively. And I think that largely the challenges, the skill sets necessary, they're largely the same, but they apply differently at different levels.
Right.
And that's where there's been some fine tuning that I think we've really had to focus on. At a given title level, we can map out in the United States that this is typically what their job might look like. At that same title level in the UAE or in Saudi or in Egypt, that same title level, the job is defined differently. And it's not that the overall treasury function is drastically different. It's the puzzle of the treasury organization and where the functions land in different positions, which it sounds a little bit silly to talk about it this way because treasury's treasury for the most part. I mean, outside of the like US specific regulations are going to be different than Saudi specific regulations, but the overall function as a whole, it sounds silly to say that it's the same but different, but it kind of is. It's the same, it's just structured differently.
Well, I want to jump in there because people talk to me. In fact, I was interviewed by a magazine just today about our salary survey. And they were saying, well, what's a treasurer? I said, yeah, it depends. I said, that's
right.
And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I get a treasurer. Someone will call themselves a treasurer. And they might be in Europe managing 3 countries with a couple of currencies, and that's it. And they call themselves treasurer. They're not a treasurer. They're a treasury manager. So for our salary survey, and then you go to someone as a housing association, and they have only one currency, but they've still got a team of 8 or 10 people. They're a treasurer, but they're not a global treasurer. You know, they're not a global treasurer of a mega major multinational corporate with 80 staff in 5 different service centers. And so we put them in different baskets. And that's what I was explaining. I said, the one thing you can be, they're all different. I just said, yeah, none of them are the same. And it's the same with the podcast. Just like when I've said to people, how come? And I said 375 plus podcasts, every story is different. One treasurer is debt laden, one is cash rich, one is centralized, one is decentralized. And listeners have heard this time and again, that I can be standing within 3 feet or 10 feet of 10 different treasurers and they all have the same title. All their jobs are different.
I think there's a huge benefit to that when you kind of go back to the whole community aspect. Like so using your podcast as an example, you had, what'd you say, 385?
300, yeah, we're 378, I think, at the moment. As of not, I'm counting, but yeah.
So
only thought we do 10. Yeah, you'll be at 380, I think. Yeah.
All right, so about 380 podcasts, and you got different versions of people's stories of how they've developed in their careers. And I think that the fact that you have this level of diversity, it's added to what the podcast can provide to your listeners.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very similar when we think about treasury, and you're exactly right. What is a treasurer? Well, it depends. It's different. I think acknowledging and understanding those differences gives you the ability to listen to what their challenges are, because you can frequently learn something from it. You can learn, like, there's a challenge in this particular area in this particular role that might be applicable, maybe not to the same title across another organization, but that might be applicable elsewhere.
Yeah.
So leveraging it's a little bit of the concept that our differences make us stronger. And I think that's the case. I think it's a challenge that people like you and I and your organization and AFP, we're going to be dealing with for the rest of our careers.
100%.
But I think that if we look at it as a challenge, every challenge is an opportunity. And I just think that opportunity is to take that information, learn from it, and how do you aggregate that and put it into a format that can be effective to teach and to help people learn and help people drive their growth.
And nice segue. It's like we hadn't planned this bit, but education and learning, obviously, I know they've been a real passion project for you and for Jim. Yes. About early career engagement. I'm shouting about it from the rooftops to say to people they should do more treasury in universities and things. Why is that such a big priority, maybe even for you personally or professionally for you?
They're the future of the profession. I mean, I think that when I ask people, like in conversations I've had, whether it be at our events and any one-on-one conversations I've had, and actually you alluded to this a bit before about your career path. When I asked how they got into treasury, the answer is very frequently some version of by accident.
100%. Yeah.
And I think about treasury and I think about what the career options are and the opportunities that exist and the contribution that people can make in a treasury career towards not only their own personal success and satisfaction, but to the business success. And it honestly drives me a little bit crazy that people are only falling into treasury by accident, that there's not enough information or education for people earlier in their career path, even at the student level when they're at university, about how like even what is treasury. Like I don't think that most people understand it when they're coming out of school. I mean, you mentioned that you didn't really know much about treasury when you got into it.
I knew
Very
nothing.
honest,
Yeah.
neither did I.
Yeah.
I started when I first started working for AFP as a contractor. I didn't have a good understanding as to what treasury is, and I think that is a massive opportunity for us. I think for AFP and how we focus on serving the profession, helping to build and develop and educate people. Actually, let me take it a little bit differently.
Yeah.
First step is how to just inform them about what treasury is. Then those that after they've been informed, they can understand a little bit about whether or not they have an interest. And once they have an interest, they can start to dive into it a little bit. Maybe that's starting with like more of an introductory course, something on the basic side, maybe do a little bit of reading on it. And that might lead into something that could turn into a treasury career, a decision around a treasury career that could be much more of a informed decision, strategic decision about where someone might want to take their career path versus they found it by accident.
Yeah.
We just did a treasury benchmarking survey, and one of the things that came out of it was recruitment, like how people are finding, and we asked a question about how people are finding recruiting and bringing people into treasury. And it's the same story. We're bringing people in from the outside. They're frequently coming from accounting, and then we try to educate them and train them and teach them the job on the go. Now, it's not to say that's a bad pathway, but it just makes me wonder how much of an opportunity that may have been to start developing that talent earlier, or even for those people that are transferring their careers from another component of finance into treasury. Maybe they could have been a few steps ahead. If treasury is ultimately where they were going to land, they could be a little bit further ahead of the game if they could start building those treasury skills and those experiences earlier.
Yeah. And you and I have talked about it, and we will do it. And Jeff and I have talked about the early years guide or something actually to give more information, which is on the roster. We will get it done sort of along with everything else. But you've only got CEO-ship to do. Yeah.
We've done a lot of work in terms of our early career content development. We have a university partner program that we're working through, trying to identify and work with universities around the world that might have some interest in integrating some of AFP's curriculum into their curriculum, because we think with the content that we have in the curriculum, we have the ability to help at least provide a guideline or some information to help put together treasury coursework for a university quickly.
Yeah.
And if we're able to do that effectively, I think that builds the pipeline of talent for the profession moving forward, which benefits all of us.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Okay, I know we spoke earlier about, and I don't want to run out of time, we're not that far from the end of the show, but you and I talked about how treasury professionals now have to embrace branding. That's what I'm going to be talking about with personal profile. And this is one of the things I'll talk about AFP in Boston and things. But just on that, you've worked across many departments at AFP, and now you've seen how treasury professionals have to be more adept at networking. And on top of that, it's not just enough to do your day job. How do you see it now?
I think that really for anybody out there, building your presence, your network, building your relationships, talking with others, it's something that I can't recommend enough. I think that there's a couple different pathways that will help people in, like one, kind of that broader learning, which I won't I know I talk a lot about that. I'm
Okay.
gonna pause on that one, but the
All right.
broader learning, being able to learn from others.
Yeah.
The other piece of it though is it starts to put you in a position where you start doing things that might be a little bit outside of your comfort zone. And I think that anything that is outside of your comfort zone means that you're testing yourself, you're expanding your horizons, and you get out and build that network more and more. I think it positions you in a way where when others are thinking about opportunities that exist, projects that exist, other career pathways or jobs that could exist, upward mobility opportunities, I think it puts the person in a little bit of a better position than if they were a complete unknown. Getting out there, making a name for yourself, expanding your brand, sharing your knowledge, asking questions, gathering knowledge, I think that drives credibility, drives skills building, it drives recognition of the individual. It's all good. It can't hurt.
And it comes down to basics as well. When I was delivering this, and we've talked about everyone having their little black book. One of my recent podcast guests, she sends herself an email every Friday that she puts in a folder about what she and the team have achieved, or in fact, the team have achieved first and herself. So when the CEO, CFO walks up to her and said, "Oh, how are you getting on? What have you done this week, this month, whatever?" She goes, "Hang on, well, I'm going to just read it off." Just like,
That's great.
but like the people there, like in the room, going, "Oh wow!" And it's like wide-eyed, like baby deer. I'm like, guys, come on, you've got to shout about this. You can put it on LinkedIn. I'm just saying, look, when was the last time any of you update your LinkedIn? I did a New York session, and 90, this was to the New York Cash Exchange. So it was a virtual session rather than our actual in the room session. 90% of the people admitted they hadn't actually put an achievement on their LinkedIn profile in anything or done any change to their profile in about 6 to 9 months. I went, guys, this is your calling card. Just update it a little bit. Just update it. Full stop. Just say, what are you doing this week? Nothing confidential. What are you doing it? And people are like, oh, wow. It's just like, you guys do an amazing job. So tell people about it. That's one of the key things. I think treasurers for too long have just hidden that light.
Yeah, I think it all depends on the profile of person, right? There's some people that are a little bit more introverted, a little bit more reserved. They kind of want to stay behind the scenes. And I think for people with that profile, that's a difficult thing to do. And I would challenge those that can fit that profile, try it. Get yourself out there. You can start small. I mean, it could be simple LinkedIn posts. It can be reaching out to one or two people that are in your network, people that you've worked with in the past, just to check in and see what they're doing, see what direction their career is taking them.
Yeah.
There are people out there with the profile that are going to stand on top of the mountain and shout from the rooftops about all the things that they've been part of and what they've been able to do. And I think that's great, but there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of talent, a lot of capability, a lot of experiences that are had by those people that maybe are a little bit more reserved. You don't want that to be a limitation. You want them, like, I would encourage them to come to an event, be part of, like, from an AFP standpoint, I would encourage them to come to an event, maybe be part of one of our meetup sessions, maybe participate in a discussion on AFP Collaborate. It's just another opportunity to start small and get out there and help someone else, share a little bit of information, ask some questions. It's a starting point.
And we had a real life example in Houston when I did my session recently. I said to the room, you've come here, you've made the effort to be in this room this evening. By the time you leave here, you need to have made at least 3 more connections. That's the challenge. You can't leave here until you've done 3. And one of the guys came up and went, I've done 7. I've done 7. I was like, what are you talking about? He went, I've connected with 7 people. I said, don't just connect with them. I said, you're not allowed to just go, oh, can I connect with you? I said, you have to have a meaningful conversation. Introduce yourself, talk about what you do. We didn't do the elevator pitch too much, just about what you do, who you are, and expanding the network. And see, it said, if they're not going to be useful, a useful connection for both of you, then obviously don't connect. But he was like, I've got 7 useful connections. And they said it because, and I said, well, tell me about why. And actually, he could justify all 7. I was like, that's fantastic. And I was like, great. And then he was just like, oh, I'm going to keep doing this. I went, yeah, look at it. And
I'm going to give you a little bit of credit.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to attend the live session in New York that we had talked about. That I would join, but one of my colleagues was able to make it. He was telling me about the fact that you told people, I want you to connect with 3 people. And the way he described it was, at first, it was quiet, maybe a little bit, maybe there was a little bit of awkwardness
Yeah.
and uneasiness about the discussions, but within a few minutes, it was loud. Like people
Yeah.
were talking, there were conversations happening. And to your credit, you pushed those people, that group, at least some number of them, out of their comfort zone, but they did it.
Yeah.
And they saw benefit out of it.
And also,
Kudos to you. Figured out how to make it happen.
I did feel bad because I do guilt the audience a little bit. I said, look, you can come here and just waste your time. Could be just a complete waste. Yeah, you've got some great knowledge from these great treasurers, but you could walk away with this bonus. And the bonus is 2 or 3 connections that could actually help your treasury career. You could help their treasury career. Wouldn't that be amazing? And they were like, oh, yeah. And it's like, come on, guys. Come on, this is it. You're good at this. You can do this as well.
You just encouraged me to reach out to a few people that I haven't spoken to in a while after we hang up.
That's it. Well, yeah, there you go. Sorry. That's a couple of hours extra work. You're like, oh, God. Now, we're nearly at wrap up, but I've got a couple more questions just before we do. So if someone listening today, maybe they're a treasury analyst, mid-manager or something like that, and AFP, yes. And I've had feedback. Actually, I've had feedback over the years. Originally, the feedback was, oh, AFP, it's more junior guys going to the AFP conference. And I've gone, no, it's not. And they're like, oh, what? I said, no, the people I met, and I talk about some of the people I meet, and they're like, oh, crumbs. I said, yeah, you get the full mix. And now that's the great thing. So it's all the way. But if someone is listening today and they are maybe a more junior analyst or manager, how can the AFP help them and how should they engage? You mentioned there about, and I've said to people, put your hand up, get on a committee, put on a panel, just join in, go to the events. Yep. Anything else?
I mean, I think there's a couple different ways you can do it depending on the level of comfort for someone getting started. But, as I mentioned, there's some easy ways to kind of get involved. If you collaborate, you could participate in a meetup, you can attend one of our events. For those that want to maybe dive in a little bit deeper, be part of one of our volunteer committees. I mean, we're always looking for people to help us. As I mentioned, we learn from the profession as much as we can to help be able to reconvey some of that information back out. Like, help us with that. Like, help us to understand what you're seeing and what we could be doing, what we could be providing, or what we could be doing differently to the broader market. I challenge people frequently, dedicate some time every week towards learning. And I would challenge that one thing that people can do with AFP, take some time, read some of our content. Like, go on our website, look at some of our research, read some of our guides, read some of our articles, read the Collaborate board. I think that dedicating that time is important. Yep. I would, I'm going to stop just a little bit short of doing the whole sell on AFP.
I would like sell. We don't mind. It's all right. We can cut it out afterwards if we don't like it. No, we won't.
I think that clearly engagement with AFP is an objective of mine, whether it's through the events or certification training, membership, the meetups, Collaborate. I could go on and on with all the things that AFP can do for people. If they want to start small, like really small, I would just say dedicate 30 minutes a week, maybe twice a week. Let's push it a little bit. 30 minutes twice a week to read a piece of content, listen to a podcast, use it as a time to reconnect with others in the profession. Ask someone on LinkedIn through Messenger a question. Like, ask them about how they've done something or their career path. I think that these are all ways that people, particularly those that are kind of getting started in the profession, maybe earlier and even into the mid-career level, actually spans the spectrum, but if you think about the opportunity to be able to take something in a couple times a week, it's invaluable. AFP can absolutely be a pathway for people to do that. But I think to get that started, you got to take that first step.
And also, what I would add to that is, and again, it was one of the conferences a while ago, and I just said, be selfish. And they were like, oh, what? I said, no, if you can make your life easier by reaching out to someone who's already done it. You put your hand up, and AFP is a great network that, oh, have you done something like this? Oh, actually, and we do this. I've had it again, we had a bubbling session where I said, right, ask the person next to you, have they implemented a treasury management system? And they all went, what? I said, do it now. They were like, oh, God. And I said, right, ask them. And they said, okay, and which one was it? Ask them this, ask them a couple of questions like this. And then afterwards, maybe you could all, and then, oh, wow. And as you said, I had to then calm it down because they were all going, oh, they were buzzing. And I'm like, yeah, guys, 5 minutes ago, you didn't know each other. Now you're exchanging that. Oh, yeah. It's through the collaboration. That's what treasurers, if they get out of their own way, they're really good at.
There's a theme that we utilize internally at AFP that I think is very applicable to that. Like, we're always looking for collaboration and try to drive an idea and kind of kick it around to see if you can make it better. The way I like to pose it is, like, if I have an idea and I'll share it with a group, I'll spread it out there. Like, here's an idea that I had. First question, and this through process of discussion, but first question is to evaluate whether or not the idea has any merit, right? So is there anything there? The second thing is, help me to make it better. Like, if there's merit to an idea, help me to make it better, because it's the collection of that critical thinking, that questioning and challenging that helps to drive to a better outcome. And what you just suggested is exactly that. Ask a question, oh, you've done it this way, and it creates that buzz. And that buzz is the opportunity to help make an idea better, help to make a process better, or help to make a strategy better. And I think that's invaluable for people.
Yeah, the sum is greater than all the parts put together, and that's the key thing.
And everybody has something to contribute.
Yeah.
And I think that's important.
And use those as your closing words. We'll put your LinkedIn details. You mentioned it earlier on the show, but we will put your LinkedIn details in the show notes. Any final takeaways for anyone else listening today? Obviously, the great thing is they get to listen about AFP, but they get CTP credits by listening to the show. Fantastic. They get to meet you and I, and they'll get to see me live on stage and meet you in Boston as well. And if they get a website, they can get a discount as well. So they should be in Boston seeing us. But they can be, if they get the discount, I might even buy them a beer. I don't know. We'll see. I don't want to go too far to all the audience, but great.
Are we going back to the first in the bar, last to leave?
Is that that's it. I love my treasury folks. That's it. That's the only reason I do this job. But yeah, for you, how would you close the show today? Over to you.
First off, I think that any opportunity that I have to connect with individuals and in the broader audience to talk, to learn from, I welcome those connections.
Yeah.
And absolutely invite everyone to join us in Boston. I'd love to see you there. I'd love to shake hands with you at the AFP booth and talk a little bit about what you do. And really, I'm going to ask you questions. I'm going to ask questions about how we can be more effective, how we can help you to be better at your role and better at what you do. And I'm not shy about asking for help. I will ask your audience. And if you come and see me in Boston, I'm going to ask you to be part of AFP, to be part of the broader community, and to volunteer and contribute your expertise. And
they don't have to wait till Boston, do they? They can reach out and connect now. Why not?
So if you connect on LinkedIn, I want to get all the connections first, then I'll subtly ask the questions. But ultimately, yes, I think that being part of the broader community is something that is of benefit to all of us. And my parting words would be: engage in the profession, engage in the community. And I think that we can together go a long way.
Fantastic. I'm going to leave it on there. Thanks very much, sir. You've been an amazing guest, and you would be. Thank you very much.
Mike, it's great talking with you as always. And I'm looking forward to that pint in Boston.
Oh, go on, Mike. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed listening to this week's podcast just as much as I did recording it with another amazing guest. Now, don't forget to subscribe on your usual platform, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, so you never miss a future episode. Whilst you're there, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, maybe give us a 5-star review. Why? Because it helps other treasury professionals find the show, join the conversation, and get even more value. Now, also, we're helping you guys in Treasury. If you are thinking about studying for your CTP or FP&A qualification, then listen up. We partnered with the AFP to offer a discount on study, both for the studying and for the preparation platform as well. So you can get through us $150 discount. Yes, $150 for each. My goodness. Yeah, we're here to help. So it's a great step for your career, and always good to save where you can. So all you need to do is go to treasuryrecruitment.com/partners. You've got the codes there. Then you head across to their website and you get the discount. You also, as well, if it wasn't enough, we're going to be heading to AFP Boston later on in the fall, as the Americans call it, in October. And we also offer a $150 discount off your registration. So wherever you might be, it's a great conference. Whether you're in UK and Europe, you should go. I'm going. It's going to be amazing. So incredible few days, great insights, proper networking, great conversations with lots and lots of treasurers. Last time in Nashville, 8,000 plus. one of their biggest ones ever. It was amazing. So just go to the show notes and you'll find the link, or treasuryrecruitment.com/partners, and get it all from there. Remember, if you're looking for a role, visit treasuryrecruitment.com. If you need some advice, reach out, mike@treasuryrecruitment.com, or come and meet us in person. We've got our sessions coming up. We've got sessions throughout this year in Texas, then we've got London, then we've got Dublin, then we're back to the US for Chicago, then New York, crumbs, everywhere, Eurofinance, the lot, and then AFP, and then back to London. And then we're doing Netherlands as well. So it'll be great to see you. We're going to be everywhere. So looking forward to it. Thanks very much. And until next week, enjoy the show.